reviewed the previous lesson, but the videos are there. The video is there, you can watch it over and over again. Okay? Yes. So today we are going to really talk about actually the real gaseous exchange. The other one was introduction. So today we are going to talk about the real gaseous exchange, whereby we shall start with those tiny organisms, those living organisms, the tiny ones, the unicellular organisms. Okay? Yeah. Organisms which are made up of one cell. And an example, we have this. Now imagine this is the whole organism, not like you who is perplexed. So this is organism, this is the internal environment, okay? Internal environment, and this one is the external, the surrounding. This one. So the external and the internal are separated by just one membrane. You can see. Separated by just one membrane, or by a unit membrane. So you just cross one membrane like this, and you've made it inside. So what does that imply? The diffusion distance is very small, is minimal. The surface area to volume ratio is minimal. And this one it is aquatic. So all the time, it will be moist. Okay? All the time it will be moist. So what does that imply? It implies that really this one does not require those complex gas exchange apparatus. Okay? The simple diffusion alone is going to be enough to take in and out the respiratory gases. Is that okay? So they have a less diffusion distance compared to other multicellular organisms. They have a large surface area to volume ratio. I think that should come next. They have a large surface area to volume ratio because they are very small. Very small. The smaller the organism, the larger the surface area to volume ratio. It's a ratio. And the larger the organism, the smaller the surface area to volume ratio. The ratio. Most people make mistakes. They say small organisms have a large surface area for diffusion. Now that one is wrong. Small organisms have their surface area is lower than large organisms. Their volume is low compared to large organisms. However, when you get the ratio of surface area to volume, then small organisms, they have that large ratio, okay, compared to small organisms. So based on that, then these organisms don't require the specialized apparatus like now you don't require those specialized apparatus. What for? Since just simple diffusion, simply materials, just these respiratory gases, they just cross one membrane and boom, they are inside your internal environment. They are inside. And the carbon dioxide just crosses one membrane and it's outside. So because of that, then they don't require a specialized respiratory apparatus, gas exchange apparatus. So I hope that one is fair, that one is okay. However, in science, there is nothing that is obvious. Okay? What seems to be obvious to you, then it seems hard, perplex, complex to me. So when you are teaching, you try to explain everything. So let's talk about the Spirogyna. Now, I don't know if you have ever seen this with your eyes. Okay? I don't know. Anybody who has ever seen this? Yes, how do you call this? in mother tongue. Okay, in your local language. You might not know mother tongue, but you know the local language. How do you call this in local language? Hey, can I have suggestions? But Tim, how do you call this in local language?
Achievement,
Yes?
achievement,
Yes, I'm listening.
Ngona, my mother tongue.
They call it Ngona in your mother tongue. Okay. Uh-huh. Any other? Is Aaron around? Tim? Jordan Mark?
I don't know.
Tim doesn't. But have you ever seen this?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Is Aaron around? So anyway, good you have ever seen this. So this is the Spirogyna. Now this is an algae or an alga, okay, that carries out photosynthesis. It's a protist. It's that kingdom. Just it's a kingdom of confused fellas. Okay? Yes. So it is just a mass of strands, okay? And these strands are made up of very many cells. A strand of cells, okay? Elongated cells. So they are also simple organisms, one cell thick, okay? Not perplex. So therefore, with these organisms, simple diffusion alone is enough, okay? And where do you expect to find them? In water, okay? So the medium of exchange therefore, is water. But air just diffuses across the unit membrane and diffuses out the unit membrane. But wait, these organisms, they are kind of unique. They are plants, they are plant-like protists, they are algae. So they do carry out photosynthesis. And from our primary P1, P3, okay, in primary, we saw that for photosynthesis to take place, then you must have carbon dioxide as a requirement, as a raw material. I was taught that in P3. Did I study photosynthesis in P3? But I was taught that in primary. And then for respiration, did I study respiration in primary? I don't know. So for respiration to occur, it needs oxygen. Okay? So now this is the organism that carries out both carbon dioxide and both the oxygen. So what does that imply? The oxygen that is produced in photosynthesis, it is the same oxygen. So it can be used where? Eh? The oxygen that is produced in photosynthesis, this is photosynthesis, it is the same oxygen. So it can be used where? In respiration. And you do respire, you produce energy, and carbon dioxide gas is evolved. And the carbon dioxide gas that is evolved, it can also be used, okay, in photosynthesis. So therefore, for such an organism, if you try to detect its RQ values, then they might vary. The RQ value of glucose, which is assumed to be 1, it might not be 1. Okay? It might be varying from the 1. That you reach at a given point where there is no net movement of these gases, of these respiratory gases. You reach at a point where the organism is not taking in oxygen, neither is it taking out carbon dioxide. Okay? Why? Because the oxygen produced in photosynthesis is enough for respiration at that point, and the carbon dioxide produced from respiration is enough at that point. Which point? At that light intensity, for instance. Okay? And so there won't be any net movement of carbon dioxide or oxygen in and out. And which phenomenon do we call that point? Or which name do we give that point? I know you've ever heard. It's a compensation. Compensation, I think this is E, and then compensation point. So in these organisms, we have that compensation point because they are photosynthetic. So what would stop them from using the oxygen that is produced? Nothing. Okay? What would stop them from using the carbon dioxide produced in respiration in photosynthesis? Still nothing. It is the same oxygen, it is the same carbon dioxide. Okay? So they can be used. Now in darkness, obviously there is no photosynthesis. Okay? And so no oxygen produced. Okay? No oxygen produced. And if no oxygen, then it means the respiration is going to depend entirely on oxygen from the surrounding. But in light, then there will be photosynthesis. So the carbon dioxide that is produced in respiration and the oxygen that is produced in photosynthesis, they can be used. Vice versa. I can't say concurrent. They can be used vice versa. Okay? Whereby the oxygen is going to be used in respiration and the carbon dioxide is going to be used in photosynthesis. And so as a result, there won't be any net movement of respiratory gases both in and out. Is it okay, everyone? Yes. So that's basically how these tiny plants, these Spirogyna, do their thing. Okay? But also plants also they can do the same. Depending on the conditions. Depending on the external conditions. Plants also do the same. So challenging, man. You can see. During day in a broad daylight, they will take in oxygen. No, they will take in a broad daylight, they will take in carbon dioxide. Okay? And then give out oxygen. But at night, then they will take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide. But you reach a point where no oxygen taken in and no carbon dioxide taken in. Still the same compensation point. So now the question is, what happens at that point? Why are you taking in carbon dioxide here and giving out oxygen? And why are you taking in oxygen here and giving out carbon dioxide? It depends on the two physiological processes that are occurring within a plant's body. So depending on the extent, okay, of reaction, then to determine which one is going to be given out. Let's see. Now plants, unlike animals, and each part of a plant is responsible for its own gaseous exchange. Not no those complex transport systems. No. That transport these respiratory gases. No. Each part, for it is responsible for its own gas exchange. Be it roots, be it stem, be it leaves, each part, each system has its own. It absorbs its own gases. Let us see. So plants have low metabolic rates. Yeah, that is true. You can never see a plant moving. You can never see a plant thinking. You can never see a plant playing. You can never see a plant regulating its own temperature. They generally have low metabolic rates. And so what does that imply? The energy that they require is far, far smaller than the energy that animals do require. And so because of this energy requirements or this energy demand, then their metabolic rate is going to be lower compared to that of animals. So like I said, unlike animals, for plants, each structure it's okay. So unlike animals, each structure carries out its own gas exchange. For example, roots, they will absorb their own air. That's why you see in mangrove plants, they do form those breathing roots. So why are you forming breathing roots when you have leaves? Hmm? For us, why don't we have nose everywhere? Like you have nose on the legs, you have nose on the arms, nose on the head, nose on the... you'd have nose everywhere if each part would absorb its own. Now you should be thinking about why nose, because it is a nose which takes in air. It is the nose which is responsible for ventilation. So for you to cope up, for it to be like a plant that absorbs, then you should have nose everywhere. So also these plants, they have the cells that allow in air on every part. When the leaves, you have their stomata, stems, you have their lenticels, and the roots, you have their lenticels. They are going to see what lenticels are. That will open up to allow air to enter into the plant. Yeah, so each plant part is responsible for absorption of its own air. Okay? So therefore on leaves, you find their stomata. On the stem, you find their lenticels. And on the roots, you find there also the breathing roots. They also form the lenticels that will allow in air into the root and then translocated to the cells. Or the air diffuses to the cells. Remember, plants have air spaces. Okay? So the air will simply diffuse into the air spaces. But now for you, the animals, now for you, it's wow. You have a complex system. So complex. Complex. Okay? That transports air across your body. Both out, in and out of your body. So therefore, the respiratory medium varies depending on the location of a given plant. Yes. We have terrestrial plants and aquatic plants. They all have different respiratory media. Where terrestrial plants, they obtain their air from air. And for and for aquatic plants, sorry for that, they obtain their air directly from water. And so basing on that, they should have totally different adaptations to obtain their air. Okay? And we shall see all that. We shall see all that. So they do require all the time. They do respire. Sorry, all the time. Yeah, this is respiration doesn't stop both day and night. Like you don't stop requiring energy. You always require energy. Whether you are sleeping, whether you are active. So similarly, plants, they will always respire because they will need energy. What energy for? Opening and closure of stomata, energy is involved. Absorption of minerals, absorption of water. Water is a passive process, but it follows minerals. It's an active process. Okay? Transport within the plant itself. Cell division. Protein synthesis, manufacture of different. Do they have proteins? Yes. What do they do? Cell division. All those processes require energy, and so respiration must be a continuous process. But however, for photosynthesis, it varies with time of the day, whereby at night you completely have no photosynthesis, you as a plant. And so what does that mean? You have variations. These are the variations. You have at certain points where you, a plant, you are taking in carbon dioxide and you are giving out oxygen. Then at another time, at another point, then you are giving out carbon dioxide and you are taking in oxygen, and be like, hey, come on, man. How is this even possible? Okay? But it's because of these two processes. Whereby at night, no photosynthesis. And so, even the stomata are closed for some plants. You saw that in nutrition, not now. The stomata are closed and no photosynthesis is taking place. Okay? So the plant is going to give out oxygen. Okay? Because the rate of respiration for it to be high. So you produce oxygen and you produce carbon dioxide and you won't use it. Okay? And it cannot accumulate in your cells. Why? It will vary the pH of the surrounding, which will affect it. So the carbon dioxide must be given out. Whereas during the day where the rate of photosynthesis overtakes the rate of respiration, then the need for carbon dioxide is going to be high. That even the little carbon dioxide that is produced in respiration is going to be used. And then you again absorb carbon dioxide from the surrounding air. Okay? And then you do photosynthesize. So those are the variations that you see in the plant's body. Those are the differences. Why is it taking in oxygen at this time? And then why is it taking in carbon dioxide at time X? Okay? So now you reach a point like how we said in Spirogyna. You reach a point and that point is usually a given light intensity. Now, you know that light intensity varies with the time of the day. Where in the morning and in the evening it's not that much. And you know that light intensity affects photosynthesis. If the light intensity increases, then photons increase, then absorbed by the photosystems, then they get excited. Then the rate of photolysis is also high. You produce more electrons and more protons. You know how you know the role of light in the light dependent stage. So if you increase the light intensity, then the rate of photosynthesis does what? Does increase. But as you are increasing, remember at night no light, okay? And in the evening, still it is decreasing. So as you are increasing, okay? Remember at night no light, so rate of respiration is high and no photosynthesis. But as you're increasing, then photosynthesis is going to increase, okay? Though respiration let it remain normal, that you reach at a certain point, okay, where there is none, where the carbon dioxide that is produced in respiration is enough for photosynthesis, and oxygen that is produced in photosynthesis is enough for respiration, and as a result there won't be any net movement of these respiratory gases in and out of a plant's body. So that point is known as a compensation point. Okay? You are compensating. In simple terms, compensation. Compensation. You are compensating. So you can have graphs, okay? And they task you to identify the compensation point. Maybe you can have such a graph. Maybe let's try to sketch. You can have such a graph, okay? And on y-axis you have there maybe net net absorption, okay? Net absorption of carbon dioxide by a plant, and then here you have maybe light intensity, okay? Intensity. Now I'm setting a question. Light intensity. You have this, you have this. This is a graph. It must have. So you may have such a graph, and they draw this, they do this. And then they say from your graph, what is the compensation point? What is the compensation point? And then I write, you have A here, you have B here, you have C here, and you have D here. So can you drop your answers maybe so that I can find them? So from your graph, what is the compensation point? So drop those answers. Oh my god, sorry, I was not supposed to use that. So from such a curve, what is going to be your compensation point? Yeah, it's amazing all of you gave C. And yeah, okay, yeah, C is correct. C is correct. Why? Because at C, let me see which pen. Okay. At C, the net carbon dioxide absorption is 0. And so what does that imply? The carbon dioxide produced in respiration is enough, okay, is used in photosynthesis, and it is enough. And the oxygen, now this graph is not showing us any oxygen, but if you had, and you can have another graph here that shows respiration. okay, and we plot the oxygen or net oxygen absorbed and net and you reach a level where they are all zero, okay, no net oxygen absorbed, no net oxygen evolved. So it means the oxygen that is produced in photosynthesis is enough, okay, is enough, okay, for respiration. And that point is what we call a compensation point. So when you are defining compensation point, if somebody has a question,
What of when they are shown and they meet?
I cannot hear. Maybe you are using the earpieces, like how somebody suggested the other time. You can ask now.
What of when you draw them on the same graph and they meet?
No, they can't be drawn on the same
That point
graph.
is port.
Yeah, it's okay. They cannot be drawn on the same axis. Maybe you have one axis here, okay, and then where this is net, okay, net, should I say oxygen uptake? Okay, the rate of respiration. And how do you measure rate of respiration? You measure it in oxygen uptake. And you are saying the curve, does rate intensity affect rate of respiration? Maybe you have such a curve. Maybe such a curve. Now, this point where they are meeting, anyway, there should be such, something small. This point where they are meeting, it is not considered. Why? Because you are drawing on two different axes. I don't know if you can see that. Because this one is net of oxygen uptake, okay? That is, you are measuring respiration. And this one is photosynthesis. And you may find when the values are totally different, completely different. Maybe these ones they are in thousands and these ones they are in tens. And you plot such a curve. So you can't say that at this point they are equal, no. But if you are using the same axis, then you are free to say that at that point they are equal. Okay? And maybe this is not carbon dioxide, but you can say net absorption of the respiratory gas. And then you draw this for carbon dioxide, and this one is for oxygen. That one, it makes a lot of sense. And if it's the same curve, okay, they have same figures, there you are free to say at this point they are equal, and that point where they are equal becomes your compensation point. But when they are drawn on separate curves, then this point you can't say that they are equal. I don't know if you are getting me. Yes, if they are drawn on the separate curve, you can't say that at this point they are equal. And so this point is going to be the compensation point, no. But where there is no net absorption of oxygen, that is at zero, and where there is no net evolution of carbon dioxide or absorption of carbon dioxide, then if they are meeting at the same point, obviously it will be same rate intensity, because the factor on the x-axis is the same. So they have to meet at the same then that point where they are meeting, okay, becomes the compensation point. That point on the y-axis, on the x-axis. So we shall have questions, but now that's not gas exchange. But then we can bring it as a by the way. That's nutrition. We shall have a question for you, and we discuss it together. I'll get for your question concerning compensation points. And yeah, so that is compensation points and plant gas exchange. Now, like we said, each plant organ is responsible for its own gas exchange. And so you cannot find specialized structures on a plant like this one is specific for gas exchange. Like you, for you have specialized gas exchange apparatus. You have the nozzle pipes. The nose connect to the larynx, to that nozzle cavity, and then connects to the trachea, and then the trachea connects to the bronchi, and finally to the lungs. The whole that system, it is specific. Look at insects, specialized respiratory system. Look at fish. Look at amphibians, birds. Okay, look at these earthworms, annelids. They do have at least, yes, it might be simple, but it's there. But now for plants, they do not have. Why? Because number one, each part carries out its own gas exchange. Each part, yes. But for you, you have specific parts. Number two, plants are not as active as you are. They have a low metabolic rate. Okay? So you don't need to supply oxygen in a robust. Does that make sense? You don't need to supply too much of it. And number two, you don't need to take away the carbon dioxide. Okay? So their metabolic rate is so down. If you compare the diffusion distances among plants and animals, you find that the most active cells in plants, they are close to the environment. I don't know if you are aware of that. The inside part, actually, the inside of the plant is dead. The xylem. Did you know that? But now the outside, the outside, it's where you have most active cells. And it is close. But for you, all your cells are living. And they require sufficient supply of oxygen. So because of that, in plants it will minimize the diffusion distance over which these respiratory gases are going to move. But now in animals, think about how can gases diffuse right from the surface until when they reach the innermost cells. Even your skin is keratinized, you can imagine. Some animals' skin is covered by fur. So plants do not really require those complex gas exchange apparatus. And this question, by the way, is real. This question, you can answer it, and it requires 8 marks. Okay? Briefly explain why plants do not require specialized respiratory apparatus, respiratory organs. And you suffer for no reason. Yet they are just these simple things. If you compare their cells, in plants, the cells do form a lot of air spaces. And in most cases, not just in most cases actually, these air spaces are filled with water. Okay? And so once air diffuses, maybe in a stem, once air diffuses through the lenticels into the plant's body, then air will simply diffuse into these air spaces. Okay? And each cell will be able to get in contact with the air. But now for you, do you have air spaces? Think about it. Do you? I don't think if you do. Okay? Then both the cell wall and the cell membrane are highly permeable to these gases. But for your cells, first of all, your skin, highly impermeable. Okay? And your cells. Yes, your cells are permeable, but for the plants, the cell wall is fully permeable to these gases. So they can easily diffuse into these plant cells. Now, why animals? You can write an essay. Can you write something at least? So why should animals have? By the way, these two questions, why plants lack and why animals have. Be careful with these questions. Okay? Yes. So can you please write some? Let me first take away before you cheat. So write some. Why should animals have that specialized gas exchange? So it is simple. Animals require a specialized gas exchange apparatus because animals have a small surface area to volume ratio. Yes, boom. It's as simple as that. Look at that babe. Just imagine if this babe was to rely on simple diffusion. Okay? How long would it take for oxygen to diffuse up to when it reaches the heart cells, the cardiac muscles? And how long would it take for carbon dioxide to diffuse out of the cardiac muscles to the surrounding environment? I don't even know if it would be possible. Okay? So animals, actually all animals, they are multicellular, and so they require a specialized gas exchange apparatus to supply enough gases to meet the high energy demands. So that is one. Another one, the outer surface is impermeable to gases. Yes. Our skins are covered by, you can see some animals, the skin is covered by fur, like I told you. Other animals, if it's not covered by fur, then the skin is covered by, it is keratinized. Like yours, it is stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. So that keratin, it doesn't permit entry of respiratory gases. In other animals, the skin is covered by feathers. In other animals, the skin is covered by scales. Think about fish. Okay? So the skin is highly impermeable. Others have an exoskeleton, the cuticle, which is impermeable to gases. Okay, so gases cannot easily diffuse. Okay, and there are reasons why you should have scales, you should have body covered with fur, your skin should be keratinized, you should have a cuticle. They are the problems that these animals face. Remember, we live in terrestrial environment where water is a challenge. So you should have ways of minimizing water loss from your body. So you strike a balance between having an impermeable body to gases and then developing a specific gas exchange apparatus. What should I do? Then you strike a balance. Okay? Yes. And you end up developing this specialized gas exchange apparatus. Animals are so active, and so they have a high metabolic rate, and so they should be well supplied with enough oxygen. And the carbon dioxide that is produced in respiration, it should be removed out of the body. Otherwise, if it doesn't, if it stays there, then it will alter the pH. And if you alter the pH, then everything now becomes berserk. The homeostasis now. Okay? Yes. So, thickened cells for diffusion alone it can't supply. Now, our cells, they are thick, not thin enough. You know, if you compare eukaryotic cells, they are thick, not thin enough to allow diffusion alone to supply these respiratory gases. And so you would have a gas exchange apparatus together with together with a transport system to distribute these gases throughout the entire body. So let's talk about leaves and the stoma. So plants, obviously, no, there is nothing obvious. We have said that each part carries out its respiration, its gas exchange. Each part obtains its own gases. But now, gas exchange mainly occurs through the leaves because they are the leaves actually which are active. Okay, they are leaves that do carry out photosynthesis. They are the ones which are active. Okay, compared to other parts. So you have their specialized surfaces over which gas exchange is going to occur from, and those are the stomata. People used to confuse stomata, stoma. So which one? Singular is stoma. Okay, if it's one, it's a stoma. But if there are many, then they are stomata. Okay, so you find somebody saying stomata is, that's a mistake. You find somebody saying stoma are, that's a mistake. So if gas exchange in plants mainly occurs through a specialized opening known as a stoma. Okay, and you can see. So this is the same scanning electron micrograph. This one, and then you can also see. So this is an open stoma, and this one is a closed stoma. So here it has opened. Okay, and here it is closed. So now it is this opening, okay, that allows entry, okay, and exit of respiratory gases in leaves. Okay, so this stoma is controlled by a guard cell, by a specialized cell, okay, called a guard cell, as you can see. And I know you studied this in transport in details. However, we shall just do a simple reminder. Okay? It is controlled by a specialized parenchyma cell called a guard cell that opens when it's targeted to open the stoma and then closes the stoma when it is flaccid. I hope you still remember that in transport. That is if you study transport. So it is closed at night because at night we have said no photosynthesis, so the need for carbon dioxide is limited. Okay? And it is opened during the day. And during day of said, the light intensity increases, so the rate of photosynthesis is high, so the need for carbon dioxide is high. Okay? So they will open their stomata. But however, we have plants that do not conform to this. The calm plants. So for them, they have what we call the reversal stomatorhythm. The pineapples, for example, they are calm plants. For them, they open their stomata at night and they fix carbon dioxide, convert it into malate, and then during the day, they close their stomata. Okay? And they photosynthesize. However, now that's a modification to survive in a particular environment. But ideally, plants should open their stomata during the day and close at night. Okay? Yes, that's good. So stomata, they open due to differences in targa pressure, and we are going to see the stomata opening and closure. We shall just briefly talk about it, just to remind us. Okay? And this is also a reminder. So like we've said, gas exchange in leaves mainly occurs through stomata. And leaves, they are the organs in plants that do carry out photosynthesis. So you need to know the basic structure, the internal structure of a leaf. And like I told you, me I like 3D pictures. So basically this is a leaf. So basically this is a leaf. If I draw something like this, how is my art? I think, okay, something like this. So if this is my leaf, and I get my leaf and I cut it from somewhere here, like this, okay, and I get this one, and I mount it maybe on a microscope, I'll get this. Okay, I'll get that. Whereby this is the upper layer, the cuticle. Okay, this is this cavern. You can see, you can even this pick is good, you can remove it. Okay, so this is the cuticle. And what is the cuticle for? It's a wax. It is made up of wax, and wax does not easily permit. It is impermeable to water. Okay, and so this cuticle prevents that excessive loss of water where it's not needed. In other words, you regulate the rate of transpiration. And then just below the cuticle, you can see you have the upper epidermis, this epidermal layer, these cells. You can see. Then you have the palisade, mesophyll cells, you can see. And you can see the differences among each cells. And actually, these cells, they are the ones that do actually carry out. They have the numerous chloroplasts, very many compared to other layers. So they are the ones that do carry out much of the photosynthesis. Then below the palisade mesophyll layer, you have the spongy mesophyll layer, the spongy mesophyll cells. Now you can see these ones, they are saturated with numerous and large air spaces. Okay, you can see. And then down you have the epidermal layer, the lower epidermis. Okay, and now with this lower epidermis, they are the ones that have these specialized epidermal cells, specialized parenchyma cells, known as the guard cells. Now if you are to study the structure of the guard cell, okay, it's like, should I say bean shaped? Something of this kind, with irregular thickening of cellulose cell walls. And it is because of that irregular thickening that it is able to control the opening and closure of the stomata. So then these guard cells, they will have this opening, okay, and it is this opening that we call the stoma, that opens directly into these intercellular air spaces. And these air spaces, they are not just space, they are not just space, it's not just space, but rather filled with water. Okay, filled with water. And then you have the vascular bundles, the phloem, and then the xylem, which are responsible for transport of water and manufactured food throughout the entire plant, and the leaf in particular. So basically that is the simple structure of a leaf. Okay? And for you to understand gas exchange, then you need to understand. You need to have that basic understanding. Actually, for you now, you don't need the basic. You need that deep understanding of a leaf. So this is a leaf and it's a 3D structure. And like I told you, I enjoy the 3D. So it has 4 layers, the upper epidermis, the lower epidermis, and then the palisade layer and the mesophyll. What's the time? There is somebody meeting at 4. Okay, we still have. So as usual for gas exchange, you must be able to open and close the stomata, because we have agreed that it is through these stomata where gases will enter into the leaf and gases will move out of a leaf. And so you must be able to regulate, because not all the time you need gases inside. And there are times where you need too much. Okay? And by the way, also you think about the aspect of transpiration. Transpiration. So as you are taking in your gases, your carbon dioxide, you are also losing water. Okay? So therefore you should be able to regulate the opening and closure of this stomata, of this stoma. And so there are theories which try to explain, okay, how the opening and closure of the stomata is regulated. And the first theory is the photosynthetic theory. Now here we are reminding ourselves. I know we studied this in transport. So here we have the photosynthetic theory, and with this, okay, and with this, it suggests that during the day, you can see our guard cell, it is green in appearance, okay, and so it has chloroplasts and chlorophyll, so it is able to carry out photosynthesis. So during the day, our guard cell is going to photosynthesize, okay, and when you photosynthesize, Then you produce a lot of sugars, okay, that will accumulate within these guard cells. Okay, now sugars will accumulate within the guard cells. Now when they accumulate within these guard cells, then they will lower the water potential and increase the solute potential of these guard cells, and so they will have a high osmotic pressure compared to the neighboring epidermal cells. And so as a result, water will move in by osmosis, okay, into these guard cells from the adjacent epidermal cells. And if water moves in by osmosis, then obviously water moves into this cell vacuum. So the cell vacuum will keep expanding until when the cell vacuum attaches the cell wall, the cell membrane, and the cell wall at large. And if the cell vacuum attaches, then it will create a tagger pressure, okay, on these cell walls. Hence the cell walls. Now, like I said, these guard cells, they have irregular thickening. Okay? Irregular thickening. Let me try to illustrate. Whereby the inner walls, they are highly thickened. I've exaggerated. And the outer walls, they are less thickened. So the outer, they are elastic, okay? But the inner, they are inelastic and highly thickened with cellulose. Inelastic, it's not double N. Okay? The inner walls are highly thickened with cellulose, and so they are inelastic. And so what does that mean? It means that on absorption of water molecules, as you are creating tagger pressure onto the walls, okay, the outer walls, they will be able to stretch outside, but the inner walls, since they are highly thickened and inelastic, they will resist that stretching. And so as a result, since these ones, they will be stretched outside, and also this one is also stretched outside, then this stretching of the outer walls is going to create tension on the inner walls that are inelastic, okay, to end up drawing apart. They will draw apart from each other, hence opening this pore. You can try this. If you get a string, okay, maybe this is a string, you tie it here, okay, and this is another string, this is some strip, then you tie an elastic string, and this is another strip, maybe a stick, and you tie another string, and you hold these ones, okay, you hold here and you also hold here tightly, and then you pull this side and another one pulls this side. You pull, yes, these ones, they will stretch, but since you are holding these ones tightly, you see that some tension is going to be created between these two sticks, that the sticks will end up drawing apart from each other. You can try it. You'll be amazed. So the tension that is created by these outer walls onto the inner inelastic walls, it will create the inner walls to draw apart from each other, creating this opening. Okay, and this will happen during day when the rate of photosynthesis is high. But now at night, where you have no photosynthesis, then the sugars will be used. And if the sugars are used, then what does that mean? The solid potential in these guard cells is going to be high. And the solid potential is going to be low. And the water potential is going to be high. So as a result, than the surrounding epidermal cells. So as a result, water is going to move out by osmosis. And then the other pressure, the outer walls are released, so the tension is released, and the inner walls, they will come together apart and close this pore. So it is as simple as that. But now the question is, really, what is the science that is causing only the guard cells to photosynthesize and the epidermal cells are not photosynthesizing? What is that science? And even when you study the rate at which the stomata close and open, the photosynthesis is not enough to account for that speed. So therefore, a need for other theories. And that's when you have the starch-sugar interconversion theory. And this theory suggests that at high pH, okay, high pH, the starch is hydrolyzed by the enzymes within these guard cells. And so what is causing the high pH? During the day, there is a high rate of photosynthesis. Okay? You have a high rate of photosynthesis. And so the carbon dioxide is used. And so if you use the carbon dioxide, okay? If you use the carbon dioxide, then the pH, remember carbon dioxide, let me also write it. Carbon dioxide will dissolve in the water to give us the carbonic acid, which is a weak acid that partially dissociates, to give us the bicarbonate ions, the hydrogen carbonate ions, and the hydrogen ions. So there are these hydrogen ions that account for the low pH. But now during the day, this carbon dioxide is going to be used in photosynthesis. And if the carbon dioxide is used in photosynthesis, then what does that mean? The pH is going to increase in the guard cell. Now if the pH increases in the guard cell, then what does that imply? The enzymes in the guard cell, they will hydrolyze, they will catalyze the hydrolysis. Enzymes don't hydrolyze, but they catalyze the hydrolysis of starch to maltose and glucose, which are sugars. And you know that sugars are osmotically active, whereas starch is not osmotically. It doesn't affect the osmosis, it doesn't affect the osmotic pressure of cells. And so what does that mean? If you increase the osmotic pressure of the guard cells, then water is going to enter by osmosis, then the guard cells swell, the outer walls, then the inner walls resist, tension is created, and they draw apart from each other. But at night, when there is no photosynthesis, then carbon dioxide is going to accumulate within these guard cells, and the pH is lowered again. And at low pH, the enzymes that catalyze the condensation of these sugars to form starch, they are activated. And if they are activated, then starch is going to be, the sugars will be converted to starch. Okay? And starch does not impact the osmosis, the osmotic pressure of these guard cells. And so they'll have a high water potential than the surrounding epidermal cells. And so water will move out and the target pressure will reduce. The outer walls, they will go back to their natural position, normal position. Tension won't be created on these inner inelastic walls, and so they will close again. And the stoma is closed at night. So basically, that's where I'm going to stop today.